Brad, over the last few years, you have really, more than anyone that I've known personally, as far as a friend, you have really dove into the study of, and I know there's a lot of different labels on it: second life, first half, second half, fourth quarter, whatever. But you really have poured yourself into it. I know you've been a resource for me, just your social media posts, and then every once in a while you send an email or something. But what got you to be, for lack of better terms, fascinated about it? What drove you down into this?
Yeah, good question. So first off, it's getting old. Or Michelle would
Which we
say, no,
both
don't say
are.
getting old. You're getting older. Uh, so I'll be 64 in about 4 months. So that's part of it. I just remember whenever I hit 60, I mean, I didn't like have a crisis or anything, but at 60, I just remember thinking it's like, man, I'm 60. Like I remember when I was young, and I remember even when I was in high school, I remember my best friend when his dad turned 50. I just couldn't believe his dad was that old,
Yeah.
50. So that was part of it. Part of it too is I think looking at some stupid decisions that I had made and trying to kind of get at the root of that, like what was going on with some of that. So yeah, it was probably a combination of recognizing some foolishness over the years, and then also just being in kind of the second half of life and forcing to just be in a position of reflection, I guess.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned that 60, and that was the way it was for me. So I just turned 61 a month or so ago. Uh, you hit these milestones. I know for me, I've said this to a lot of people. When I turned 40, for instance, it didn't really bother me. In fact, I think I was kind of like, okay, maybe I'm a real man now, So 40, I it didn't bother me. 50, a little bit. I mean, I was thinking, okay, I'm at the peak. I mean, if I live to be 100, I'm halfway there. So but that still didn't tweak with me. But in the year 59,
Hmm.
that whole year, I was kind of freaked out because I kept
Interesting.
seeing this. I kept seeing this image of an hourglass, and it's like the bottom of it had a lot of sand in it, and the top part didn't have much sand. And I was really, but I think that the Lord was really like saying, "Hey, I really want your attention now because you're going around. If you get a lot of years, you've got another third left. So you probably got between a quarter and a third left." It got me to thinking. I'm sure part of that was what was going on with you too, right? Like, well, hey, I don't have that much left.
Yeah, I love the hourglass image. Well, no, actually, I don't like the hourglass image. Yeah, that's kind of spooky. But yeah, and I think 60 was that for me. I mean, it's just that's a big number. It seems like. So I just remember then just being forced into a time of self reflection, kind of going on a journey of self awareness. I would say, and then when I first started reading and really being like introduced to this idea of that kind of this framework of first and second half of life, man, it resonated. Like it just
Mm,
the first half of life, the way different authors framed it and described it fit perfectly, and then kind of the where I was on the journey, 4 years ago. I just started to recognize the benefits of the way they again just kind of gave a framework for the second half of life.
yeah. So what has been some of the real uh, just and I know you got a lot, but what have been the big key the big boulders for you? They've been like, oh man, this is really doing me very well as far as what I'm learning here and what I'm seeing now. What's been some of the output of that for you?
Yeah. So first, I guess first just to kind of give a little frame up for first and second half, and again, and then I can just kind of reflect on how
Yeah, that'd be good.
it just fit. It is related to kind of my journey. So the first time I ever heard about first and second half of life, I thought it was an age thing, or like it was about chronology. And
Right.
most of the time, it probably is. I mean, it's loosely related to your age, but I recognize it's not primarily about chronology. It's really about like I would say a psychological and a spiritual journey. It's really about like
Mm.
our developmental journey. And it's, I don't want to make it sound too spiritualize it too much, but it's really a journey to, I don't know, focus more on your life's purpose and meaning. And some people might even say wholeness. So some authors talk about, they use the language of inner work. Like the first
Mm.
half of life is about constructing, and the first half of life. The second half of life then is more about this more inner work. So here's what was so helpful for me to kind of contrast those two things, first and second half. And I'll bet as people are listening or watching this, if they're in first half of life, they'll recognize this. But
Mm.
so one author, his name's Carl Jung, and it's Jung, who I wasn't
Yeah.
familiar with 6 years ago. And he's like the father of what some people call analytical psychology. But he's the one that really coined that phrase or the language of first and second half of life. But Jung calls what we're concerned about in first half of life, he calls it identity formation. So
Mm.
so just think about that for a minute. So first half of life, we're primarily concerned about the formation of our identity. So in other words, the way he would describe it is it's all about external markers of success. So when we think about when we were younger and you think about how, what were those external markers of success? We would say, well, it's like job titles, like our role, in some cases, our education, like what kind of degrees do you have, your status, probably your career, because and this is especially true for men. I think it's true for everybody, but I think it's especially true for men because we identify ourselves with what we do. And that's all first half of life stuff.
Mm.
And what Jung would say, it's ego stuff, actually. It's like we create this persona around all of those things, around our status and career and job titles and
Yeah.
education. And here's the key so back to your question, here's the key is that in the second part of being in the second half of life is we have to recognize that like temporary personality or that ego persona isn't who we really are. So it's
Mm.
rarely a reflection of our true self, or rarely a reflection of who we really are. So the huge issue in second half of life is recognizing that, and to recognize that kind of facade or persona that we created throughout the first half of life. And again, we can
Mhm.
just call it ego or false self.
Yeah.
Um, it's not who we really are, and the problem is it like. It controls us. Like
Yeah.
we operate out of this false self,
No
and
doubt.
and typically the false self, this like persona that we've built up, we build it up because of expectations that other people have on us. It might be our family, or it might be like society or culture. So
Hmm.
it's another way to say it is it's a version of ourselves that we create for others. We like
Boy.
curate it for other people because we think we'll be more acceptable or accepted by people. So, and the problem is it's not who we really are. It's a facade. It's
And
funny.
the stress and the pressure to chase that constantly, and to constantly put that makeup on every day, and it's a heavy burden, isn't it?
That man, that's really, yeah, that's insightful and important. I think, Lance, yeah, is that we have to try to maintain it. Um, yeah, and again, for me, mask, facade, persona, and it's funny. I think about just this morning. I was thinking about you and I are old music fans. The Who. Do you remember their song "Eminence
Right.
Front"? Do you remember a line in
Oh
that
yeah.
song? It's a put on.
Yes.
You say it's a put
Yes.
on. It's a put on. Well, that's what it
So
is. It's like
true.
this false self. It's a put on, and we operate
Yeah.
out of it. So all of that, man. The key, I think, then is in second half of life we have to recognize, and usually it's not by choice. We have to go through some stuff, like some kind of crisis, failure, loss, suffering. Maybe that false self gets like blown up, and that's when we're forced in the second half of life then to do this inner work or soul work, uh, to break away that false self and really go on a journey of inner work to to recognize who we really are, and then try to really operate out of that. Kind of,
Yeah.
another author says it's a time when we redefine success. So in the first half of life, we have this certain way of defining success. It's a very different way to define success in the second half of life. It's more about meaning and purpose and
Yeah.
surrender and sacrifice and things like that. So all that, man, it's just been that whole journey. Just been super like enlightening to me, but then also just practically, it's just been really helpful.
Well, here's something that I've observed about you. It's interesting because you and Michelle. How many years ago did you move down to the
Six,
Tampa St. Pete area?
yeah, 6 years ago next month, I think.
Yeah, moved from Kansas City, and we were in Kansas City for a long time.
Yep.
So you go from the Kansas City scene to and every picture I see that you post or Michelle posts, I mean, you're in shorts and flip flops. I mean, you're just,
I am right
which
now.
really is a perfect picture, kind of what's happened inside. You have just you. It's. I mean, you haven't moved to Margaritaville and let yourself go. Okay, but but
Margarita.
there's this beautiful, holy. I don't give a blank anymore. That's actually not a letting things go. It's actually letting go in order to take hold of the right things. But it's a relaxation of, oh, I don't have to live up to this or to that. I really want to live for what I'm made for. And anyway, I've just seen that in you. And just metaphorically, like I say, through the pictures, but with the things that you've been posting too. And I think that there is something so healthy going back to that letting go of all this burden to carry of you are letting go and picking up the right things. That's what happens to a man or a woman, even in this stage of life. Now, I know that there's different transitions. And so, like this last part stage, like we're talking, that happens to most people, and we're men, so we're going to talk from the perspective of men. Let
Right.
women talk for themselves. So most guys, it starts happening somewhere in his mid 50s or whatever. On, but there's that transition around 40 that's real significant too. In fact, you were talking about an individual that that's just like right in the middle of that, and he typifies everything that is about not receiving that transition and fighting it. What about that transition when a guy's going from his late 30s to his early 40s? What's that change?
Yeah, well, I just think I'm just telling you, I just don't know if that deep shift in self. I mean, just the motivation to go on. I mean, doing soul work or inner work, it's not easy. It's hard, and
Mm,
sometimes it's
yeah,
hard because you have to look at stuff you don't want to look at, right?
yeah,
But
yeah.
what I was going to say is, I think for most people, it's just not going to happen unless there's some pain and suffering. Like,
Mm,
and that's why sometimes there can be guys who, again, we're going to talk, because seriously, I just think women are typically more self-aware than men are. So that's why a lot of times I'll just talk about men, because I just think men, as we said earlier, identify themselves too often with what they do rather than
yeah.
who they are. I mean, we do it all the time, but also we're just not very self-aware. I just think the level of self-awareness, I just think women are more in tune with who they really are, more than men are. And
I totally agree with that.
but having said that, I do know, I've met men that are younger, and they're actually, that's why I say it's not chronological. They're actually in more of a second half of life phase. Is because they experienced some deep pain and suffering in early life. So I tell you, one of my favorite quotes from Roar, and you've heard me say this and tweet this before. See if I can get it right. He says, "Suffering of some sort seems to be the only thing strong enough to dislodge our arrogance and ignorance."
Mm,
It's like we're not forced to go on this journey and to try to break away from this false self and this fake facade persona that we've created for other people until we're forced to. Like
Yeah.
something heavy has to happen. So the now maybe not 100% of the time. I mean, like if a dude is open to hanging out with somebody that's older, I
Mhm.
say all the time, look, I implore you, for any young man, go find some guy that's 20, 30, or 40 years older than you and go hang out with them
Oh,
and sit and
absolutely.
listen. Because there's just some I mean, you and I both know this. There's some life learned wisdom that just doesn't come until you fall or fail
Yeah,
or
and you can't get it out of a book. You can't get it out of an article or a bunch of podcasts.
nope,
You have to go
man.
through it yourself, but man, it sure helps. And that kind of leads to something I was kind of curious about. Um, there's always this question: what would you go tell your younger self? I don't want to ask that. I want to ask what do you think that younger men need from older men, and what do older men need from younger men? Younger men going to this thing of you saying, "Hey, go find an older guy to hang out with," but there's also things that younger men can give the older men too. But I think the biggest issue though is that young men need to hang out with old men.
Yeah.
So what did each one of those groups get from the other, in your opinion?
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot just because of all the stuff reading about first and second half of life. If you're in the second half of life, it's easy to just think about, oh, this is what I have to offer to somebody that's in the first half of life.
Yeah.
So I've thought about this a lot because I know, because of blind spots we all have, there's things that I need to benefit from. So really, just a couple of weeks ago, I was kind of journaling about what are two or three things that first half of life guys could offer to older guys, and vice versa. So here's a couple of things I'd say for a first half of guys in first half of life. What do they have to offer? Second half, I'd say first off, in some cases, probably like, I mean, this sounds super simple, but just like energy or vitality. I mean,
Mm,
sometimes as we get older, we can become complacent. So sometimes just hanging out with younger guys, there's kind of it might even be physical, like physical energy, vitality that we can glean from younger guys. Second, a little more significant and serious, probably, is just you might call it a fresh perspective, new eyes, curiosity. Maybe there's different ways. Once again, I think sometimes as we get older, not only can we become complacent, I think we can become cynical. So
ah,
sometimes it's good to hang out with a young guy that's not cynical and just like
yeah.
sees the possibilities, right? Um, Even kind of like, I don't know, I heard someone one time say why, like a why not perspective.
Mm,
Um, so, and then, but here's the biggest one for me. And it's funny. This just came up yesterday morning. So yesterday morning, I had breakfast with a young leader here in town. I just think is one of the best young leaders I've ever met. I discovered yesterday that I'm the exact same age as his dad. So that was
oh,
humbling.
wait. Let's just, because I know who you're talking about. So let's just let that soak in.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll
So,
that'll knock you down a peg, won't it?
yeah. So he told me, he was talking about his dad, and he told me how old his dad was, and I just said, "Oh my gosh, that's how old I am." But here's what hit me after having breakfast with him yesterday, and I think this is something that first half of life guys can offer us. And I was trying to think how to articulate this, and I'm just going to say it like this: they can be a mirror.
Mm,
Uh, they can be, and here's probably a better way to say it: they can be a mirror for self reflection. So here's what I mean: is as I was having conversations with him, I was able to reflect on the things that I've processed pretty well and I've worked on over the last few years, but also I could reflect on the things that maybe I haven't.
mm,
So just looking at kind of not my younger self, but this younger leader that I just appreciate and admire so much, uh, he just kind of presented the opportunity for me to reflect on just the work that I've been doing the last few years,
mm,
and some work that I still have to do, if that makes sense.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, that's yeah. Anything else you'd add to that? I mean, thinking about hanging out with
Well, I think
younger
that you hit on a
younger
lot
guys.
of them. I think that they definitely do. They keep us more up to date. you know, and they give a perspective. I like what you said about, it's so crazy. You as you get older, and especially at the age that we're at, is when you stop and listen to your own thoughts, or what maybe even what's coming out of your mouth, you realize, my goodness, this is the thing right now that I couldn't stand about old guys when I was a young guy. And I've become that, that grumpiness or that cynicism or
Oh,
whatever.
you've been that way forever. Come on.
Oh man, I
You
stepped
need to
into that
become
one.
it. Oh, man.
I've refined it.
Yeah,
So,
right.
but man, it does it that is so true. That's the way that it is. But I think hanging around consistently around some young blood can even and I think you mentioned it can challenge you too, because you can
Yeah.
get into this place in your life where you're like, I'm not getting off the porch anymore. It's like, no, the young guys are like, come on, man. Come on, surf's great. Come on, play with us, hang out with us. I think that's really good for old guys. Now let's
Yeah.
flip it. What
Yeah.
what do you think that the younger guys really need in these relationships with older guys?
Yeah. Now, of course, this is the one that I've reflected on the most over the last decade, and again, especially the last 4, 5, 6 years. Um, and this is what I wish someone would have shared with me, like,
Mm,
over that breakfast yesterday morning, if our roles would have
yeah.
been flipped. So the first one I would say is permission to slow down, because in first half of life, when it's all about this identity development and creating this, facade or persona, uh, we don't slow down because of expectations, often because of expectations either that we put on ourselves or that other people put on us. So I would just say, just give permission to slow down. And I work with church planters a lot, and uh, man, younger church planters, I hear myself telling them, probably 3/4 of the conversations I have with guys, I'll say that. I'll just say, dude, you don't have to do it all. You can create a longer runway. You don't have to do it all overnight. This is a long haul, a slow burn.
Mm,
It's like you can't. You just, and sometimes I think they just need permission. Seriously, they just need permission for an older person to say to them, slow down. And as you slow down, ask deeper questions. Um, it's just not healthy. So that's the big one. And then the second one I've already alluded to is just that I just think we have, like, I think earlier I said lifelong or life learned wisdom. There's just things in the second half of life. We just have perspective on things that can only come from years and from making mistakes. Um, so specifically to that, and I've written a little bit on this, there are two like really big buckets that I share all the time. Again, that I do wish this is something that someone would have shared with me
mm,
20, 25, 30 years ago. Now, I don't know if I would have listened, but I still wish someone would have shared. There are two things. I would say self-awareness um, and vulnerability.
mm,
So just quickly, so self-awareness, this relates to everything we've just been talking about, Lance, is just to say, just do whatever it takes to go on a journey of self-discovery. Like,
yeah.
figure out, like, find a tool, find a resource that helps you discover really how you're wired. And ask tough questions about, motivation. Why do you do what you do? What are your good tendencies? What are your not so good tendencies? Like, where do you go when you're experiencing stress? There's just a whole slew of questions of so there's all kinds of different tools and resources out there, and I have a good buddy that's like he knows all of them, and he says sometimes when people ask him, hey, well, what's the best tool? He says it's the one you use. So
Yeah.
it's like, just pick one and use it. Now, my favorite, I know everybody's not a fan of it, but my favorite is the Enneagram. And I'm telling you, the Enneagram, this isn't an overstatement. It's revolutionized my life. It's
Wow.
just given me insight into my motives, like why I do what I do, and then it's given me insight. And my wife Michelle and I, Michelle, we have both over the last probably 5 or 6 years, we've probably read together 8 or 9 different books and perspectives on the Enneagram. and it's just been fantastic. So all that just to say, I think self-awareness, I think second half of life guys that have been through it, they have wisdom, and part of that wisdom is to say to younger guys, go on a journey of self-discovery, because I'm telling you, it's just like a lack of knowing yourself. It's just devastating.
Yeah.
It's harmful to you. It's harmful to those close to you. It's harmful to all your relationships. And then just real quick, the related thing to that then is vulnerability. I would just say, once you have a better understanding of yourself, you just got to be vulnerable with other people. You just have
Yeah.
to. And it's not about what you're, and me, because I'm an Enneagram 5 and an INTJ, if people know what that means. I live in my head. So I had to learn that vulnerability piece. It's not just sharing what I'm thinking, but it's sharing really what I'm experiencing and feeling.
Hmm.
So you just no relationship will thrive if there's not vulnerability. And once again, for guys, it's hard. And man, my whole first 50 years, I sucked at it. I mean, absolutely sucked at it. So I think that's wisdom that a guy that's been through life a bit can have to share. It's things like that to share with men that are in the first half of life still.
Yeah, that's so good. Very good. I mean, we could talk for 30, 45, maybe an hour or two on each one of those that you just talked. That vulnerability piece, and I think that that's part of that persona, and that false persona, and it's that ego piece, right? That shadow piece of us that is trying to live up to something that we're not. And what the sad tragedy of it all is, we never live who we are. We never actually live in that identity because we haven't discovered it, as you've said a couple times here. um Finding out who you are, and I've heard a few people just in various interviews, not even necessarily about this subject, but it's usually older guys that used to, when I would hear them say this when I was young, I would think, man, what's wrong with you? I would think it was ego, and I'd find out it's actually not ego when they go, you know what? I came to the point where I actually like myself. And I think that that's a big part of it, is most of us all along, we don't like ourselves. And even the people that act so egocentric, narcissistic and everything, who act like they do love themselves, they actually hate themselves. They have not come to know themselves. And I think that's part of it is, and that's really more of a question. Would you say that part of actually liking ourselves, or the lack thereof, is because we don't know who God's made us to be?
Yeah,
How
I
does
think
that fit
it's
into it?
yeah, no, I think that's right. Again, the language that some people would use was, and again, it might sound, like when I was younger, I wouldn't have like leaned into this language, but I get it now. It's discovering our true self. It's not our false self. It's not this facade or mask that we put on, and it's not our shadow self. The way some people would describe shadow self, and how that's different than false self, is the shadow self are the things we don't want other people to know about, so that we keep them in the shadow. That's why we call it a shadow self.
Mm,
It's the things that we're ashamed of, and they're the things that we think we're not vulnerable. Go back to what you just said, because we're fearful of judgment and rejection, and we see it as weakness. So we just like keep all that in the shadow. We know about it, but we don't want anyone else to know about it. So I think once we identify the stuff we keep in the shadows, and once we identify this like fake persona that we put on, once we like recognize, begin to deal with those things, we can actually then, that's when I think we move into this kind of second half of life type of phase. And we begin to recognize who we really are. And like you said, who we are is we're made in the image of God. Uh, so yeah, I think you're right. I mean, when you meet somebody that's just deeply egotistical and self-centered and self-absorbed, there's stuff going on in there that they're not, they just don't know. They haven't been forced to face
yeah.
both the false self and the shadow self. And once we do, yeah, that's what guys would say about the whole second half of life. There's freedom there that we just aren't going to experience otherwise. Um, and man, there's just enormous freedom. And it's even like it gives us a new perspective on things. And again, you and I've talked about this before, and I wasn't aware of this, until the last 10 years. But the whole idea, I remember in first half of life, everything's black and white. People
Mm,
call it dualistic thinking. It's us versus them. It's good. Everything's good and bad. There's black and white. There's no gray.
yeah.
In the second half of life, though, you move into more of a both and thinking rather than either or. And you see that faith is full of mystery, right? And
Yes.
paradoxes, and life is like
Yes.
we develop a what some would call a non-dualistic perspective. Um, so yeah, there's more integration. I just think there's greater just depth and meaning. So
And
yeah,
there's more appreciation too, isn't there? I mean, there's more love comes into it. There's more grace that you give to others. You know what you're saying right there, that mystery part. And I know we've talked about this in the past. Uh, you know, I mean, right now in our lives, we both have more theology than we've ever had. I mean, you're constantly gaining on it, refining it, and everything. But in a way, I'd be curious to see what you say to this. I feel like I have less theology than I've ever had. I have less assurance on so many different things, but I have greater faith. My less assurance has not caused me to have less faith. It's actually caused me to have more faith because I think it's that mystery of God. God is so great. So if you were to ask the 28-year-old Lance Ford about eschatology, oh man, I could give you charts, man. I could lay it right out. Here's how it's going to be. This guy right now, I got no clue. I trust Jesus. I trust thy kingdom come, thy will be done. Are you there too?
yeah, a heck yes, and there's freedom in that, right?
Oh
Um,
man.
and I don't know, for some people it's going to sound like liberalism or something, but it's no.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's that first half of life. It's all about certainty. It's black and white. It's either or. We think
Yeah.
we've got all our ducks in a row.
Got it
So
figured out.
what's the stupid quote about the boxer? Like everybody,
Oh yeah, everybody's
Tyson,
got a plan until they get punched in the face.
right? Exactly. And that again, when you get older and you get punched in the face a few times, yeah, it forces you to look at things a little differently. So,
Yeah.
yeah, 100%.
And I love it. I love it because like you said, there's more there's more freedom, but there's not less faith. It's greater faith than ever,
Right.
and it's faith in the right place. It's faith
I
in
think so.
God.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
good stuff.
Brad, man, thanks for this convo. I'm going to be knocking on your door more in the future, but man, I
Uh,
really appreciate it.
I love it. I mean, it's just been so beneficial to me personally. And again, if I have the opportunity to share with younger guys that, man, I'm not only happy to, I love it.
Well, I'm going to hold you to that.
Sounds good.